Okay, welcome back, everyone. We are working with ggplot2, and we are working with bar plots in ggplot2. And so if you are just opening up this notebook, just getting started with these videos, you're going to want to load the ggplot2 package. And we are working with the Palmer Penguins package and the Penguins data frame. So there's going to be some commands that you would probably have wanted to run. So I think the easiest way, again, with all of these notebooks, if you're just kind of opening them up in the middle, would be to go into the runtime menu, click on a code cell wherever we're getting started, go to runtime, run before. That's going to run all of the code cells prior to that one. And then you can run this code cell and make sure that the output gets generated. This means that you're all caught up. You've got all the packages loaded. So we've been creating bar plots in ggplot2. We've talked about how to change the color, remove the legend, for example. So now the question might be, maybe we want to customize the labels, add a title to this plot. Maybe the font size in Colab is kind of small. We want to increase the font size on these things. So more cosmetic changes to the plot. But these are important things to think about. And most of these are going to be done inside of the theme piece of the ggplot. So the labels, we're going to add those inside of the labs piece, the labs component. So if you're curious about what sorts of things we can add to a ggplot in the labs, here they kind of give you a little rundown of like, hey, labels are really important, and I agree. So I just wanted to kind of clip out their documentation over here. But here you can see the types of labels that are available. You have a title, subtitle, caption, tag. These are all possible things that you can add. And here it tells you other ways that you can add these labels, and I'll explain what that means as well in a moment. So that's good to know. We'll also talk about themes. And I just want to point out that, there are links to these documentations that'll take you to web pages outside of Colab. These commands open up the help documentation inside of Colab, and it's essentially the same documentation. So it's helpful to just open these up in Colab, and then you don't have to like go to a different web page. But here you can see all of the various themes that you can modify with your plot. So things like the axis title, the x-axis text, ticks, etc. So is a long list of things that you can change, the legend, position, justification. So it can get a little overwhelming if you're looking at this list. The short story is that with the theme, your plot is highly customizable, right? You can customize all sorts of features of your plot. If you don't want to bother with it, it creates super nice plots without worrying about it. So this is a really nice looking plot without worrying about all of those um, features, but certainly getting under the hood and tweaking things is pretty nice. So if I want to add a main title, a subtitle, labels to the X and the Y axis, then all of that can go inside of the labs. And so each time I add, you can think about these as layers. Each time I add another layer to my ggplot, I need to add a plus sign. So over here, I input my data and my aesthetic mapping. I had a plus sign, right? And then I say, what geom am I using? And that was all I needed to create this plot up here. But now I want to add another layer. I want to add some labels. So I add a plus sign over here. That's what this is doing. This says we're going to get rid of the legend, right? Because that legend didn't really give us any additional information. And then I need to be careful, and we'll see what happens. Like if I don't have this plus sign over here and I just run this code cell, it actually worked surprisingly. But I got this like error over here that says null. Let me remove a more critical plus sign. If I remove the plus sign at the end of the ggplot, this gave me an error since it's saying like you need a geom. And so some of these plus signs are more critical than others. So here I removed the plus sign after this one, and it's like giving me all sorts of errors over here. So if you see some errors like this, oftentimes it might be because you forgot to have a plus sign at the end of one of your lines. So here I input the data and the aesthetic. Here I tell the geom, and then I have a plus because then the next layer is, hey, don't add a legend. And then I add another layer to this, which is all of my labels. So inside of this, I have an open parenthesis and a close parenthesis notice. And then I have all of my labels inside of here. And each time I enter a label, like here's my title, I separate it with a comma. And then I have my subtitle. I enter my subtitle, I separate it with a comma. And then I have my X label, I have a comma, and I could put a line break here if that makes it easier and say this is my X label and this is my Y label. And so I just want to make sure that after each of these, I have a comma, and then I don't need a comma after my very last one. So I've got a title, comma, subtitle, comma, X label, comma, Y label. Those are all of my labels. And we can see what that does down here. Put species, count, main title, subtitle. And the text that's used in Colab is small, at least for me. And so if you want to increase the font size, then you can do that with the text command inside of a theme. So after I've entered all of my labels, I have a plus, and then I can add some additional themes. And in this case, I want to increase the text everywhere, all of the text. So you can increase the text on just the x-axis. You can increase the text on just the y-axis. You can increase the text for just the ticks. So you can see that you can fine tune which things you want to increase the text on. If I want to increase the text everywhere, then I can simply just say increase the text everywhere without specifying individual elements. And then I say text size, make it 18. And this will increase the font size everywhere. And I can change that to 20. If I wanted to make it even bigger, that'll make it even bigger. If I want to make it even larger, I can set it to 30, and that makes it even bigger, and so on. So you can set the text size to however large or small you want just by changing that. And I think this makes a slightly nicer bar chart to take a look at. We've got titles that are a little more descriptive and the font is a little bit bigger. And what's nice is that these numbers, which are like telling me the counts, are more legible, are more readable, at least for me. And if you want it even larger, you could just change that size to a larger value. And in this labs documentation, it said, here's one way that you can use the add labels. And then it says, here's another way that you can add labels. And what that means is another way that I could have added labels to my plot would have been by specifying the title by adding this element gg title, and then I could add a separate label x lab, and then add a y label as y lab. So adding these each as a separate layer as opposed to adding them all inside of the labs command. So these are just two separate ways of doing exactly the same thing. This creates exactly the same plot. So I am not going to create plots, the same plot in multiple different ways because I think it is just makes these videos longer and maybe adds unnecessary confusion. But I just want you to know that there are multiple ways of creating these. If you're looking at other sources, they might create the same plot in a slightly different way. I'm going to defer to kind of when I'm adding multiple labels of doing them all inside of the labs section of a ggplot command. So here is a nice looking ggplot. We've got different colors for the different bars. We've added labels to the axes and the main title. We've changed the fonts. But in its most simplest form, we could have created a perfectly fine looking bar plot just with the first two lines over here. All of the rest of this stuff are cosmetic changes. All right, thanks everyone.